It's a very busy week for earnings season stateside, particularly in the tech sector. On Tuesday, we'll get results from Snap. On Wednesday, it's eBay, Tesla and Microsoft. And on Thursday, we're looking out for Twitter and Amazon. Last week, Netflix surpassed expectations with a surge in its shares after hours after international subscriber growth beat the street. Joining me to discuss is Megan Boxall from Investors Champion. Megan, good to see you. Let's start with your overall expectations for the tech sector earnings this quarter.
It's it's an interesting time. I mean, for some companies it is Q3s that are being reported. Others we've got Q1s, and it just expectations are so varied. We've as you say, we've had a few last week. Netflix was one of the ones that I thought might be catastrophic. It was one of those ones that could have gone either way, and it did. It went very well. And then, as you say, this week there's a whole range of companies coming in with their numbers. So yeah, expectations I think are incredibly varied because we're looking as well at what the impact of tariffs and the trade war has done. We kind of saw a little bit of that in the summer when the companies reported what was in most cases Q2 earnings. This quarter we might see a bit more of the impact of tariffs, other global trade tensions. These things are all having an impact. The impact of tax and other financial measures in the US. Regulation as well, that's starting to have a bit more of an impact on companies. Well, Amazon is starting to have to think about it a bit more, whether or not it's actually going to have any kind of impact. Regulation in both the US and in Europe. So yeah, I think in general as well, the US tech sector is, expectations are high. They just have been for a long time. So a lot of these companies have huge valuations, and actually only the very best is going to do. And if they do start disappointing, then we might see some quite major share price sell-offs. But yeah, a lot of them could go either way.
So you mentioned Amazon there. I mean, we've seen shares do pretty well so far this year. They're up by about 17%, but we're still off those highs from July. So, I mean, do you think this earnings quarter is going to provide a tailwind to that stock? And what's the key kind of area to watch? Is it that AWS cloud computing component of its earnings?
I think that's very important because that is the main driver of profits. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of the business which has slowed down slightly. At the same time that Microsoft's cloud business is accelerating faster. Microsoft is still a long way off it in terms of actually how much of the market share it has. But for Amazon, the AWS is so key to its profits. I think the other thing that's interesting with Amazon since the summer, like you say, the share price has come off quite a lot. It's in real spending mode. It spent $800 million on improving its warehouses and making sure everything's running smoothly. It spent that money on boosting sales, which is what it's doing. But then the profits have taken a bit of a hit, the margins have taken a bit of a hit, and people since the summer have been sort of stood off Amazon a bit. The share price has fallen where other stocks have continued to rise. And that will be interesting to see what happens in these numbers. If the profits are still disappointing, will people continue to say, oh, Amazon isn't growing, isn't doing what we want from it? But then at the same time, I've got no doubt that the revenues are going to be impressive because Amazon's revenues have never not been impressive. So yeah, I think AWS will be a really key thing to look at, and whether or not the margins have recovered at all. And if they haven't, and the share price does fall, then is that a buying opportunity? Is it a buying opportunity now? It is quite a long way from its highs, where other tech stocks have continued to rise. It's an interesting time to be a potential new Amazon investor, I think. All
right, now what about Tesla as well? Because this is a stock that's seen a really impressive rise in its share price since the lows in the summer. It's up by around 45%. It had a rocky start, first half of the year, but it seems to have really recovered there. I mean, are you optimistic about this quarter's earnings, and has the price action taken you by surprise?
Yeah. I kind of thought people were writing off Tesla for a little while, at least until it came out with some really solid numbers. And it has had some impressive car numbers. It's said the number of cars it's actually produced is better than it expected already. So we know that. And that has been driving the good performance of the shares. But I am surprised at how quickly people seem to have forgiven the governance issues, which continue to be there. I mean, Elon Musk is still a bit of a loose cannon. He's calmed down a bit. He doesn't seem to be coming out with these huge numbers and we're going to be profitable by next week, next month. He isn't saying those things. anymore, which is interesting because the share price has still grown a lot, and before the share price was growing because he was saying those things. Now it seems to be growing because he's not. So I think Tesla is in an interesting position. I think the electric car space is flying. So Tesla, all it really needs to do is continue to be a dominant player in that, and it's going to have a really good future. And I think it's a long-term thing, though. It's not like Amazon and Microsoft, which can continue every single quarter to be impressive. Tesla's going to continue to have up and downs for a long time, and it is, it's very much within the trade situation where it is going to be impacted by the trade war. And as long as it can manage that, okay, then yeah, I think there's no reason to say why Tesla can't keep growing, but maybe not quite as rapidly as it has done in the last few months.
So you've mentioned the trade war a couple of times there. We know this is a sector that's highly sensitive to those developments. I mean, given all of that cloud of uncertainty and given the lofty valuations that we're seeing across the sector, do you continue to be bullish?
Yes, in the long term, but I think there are signs that there might be a bit more of a wobble, and I think some of the not the big tech companies, some of the unicorns that have listed this year, we're going to start seeing their first real numbers, and January as well we'll see their first annual numbers since they listed, and that might start to spook people a little bit because their valuations will really show up once they actually have to report some proper numbers. And I think Tesla also kind of falls. I know it's not a startup unicorn, but it kind of does fall into that as well. It's kind of been hype that has got the share price to where it is at the moment, rather than actual numbers. So yeah, I think there could continue to be wobbles. Maybe not to the same extent that we had last final quarter, where the share prices of so many companies just crashed. I don't think we're going to see that again, especially as the banks have started the earnings season really, really well, surprisingly well, considering last year it was all carnage after the banks reported. So yeah, I think there are reasons to be optimistic, especially over the longer term.
And just very finally, what's your sort of top pick in the sector then?
Microsoft. I've just got nothing bad to say about Microsoft. It's such a great company. Yeah, it's exciting. Adobe as well. Adobe, we've already had Adobe numbers. They were a couple of weeks ago. They're another just unbelievable company. Software, any company which is just smashing it in the software space, it has such reliable earnings that it's going to take quite a lot to unseat it. And at a time where the regulation is trying to sort of break up these tech massive companies, if they've got solid revenues from software, reliable recurring revenues, they're going to keep growing really, really nicely.
Megan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Megan Boxall from Investors Champion. I'm Victoria Scholar, and thanks for watching IGTV.